didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would go.
Good morning. Welcome to Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located on occupied ancestral land of the Muskogee Creek Nation. My name is Sally McCreary, and I will be serving as service associate today. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces we might be ashamed of. All of us are welcomed here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet. Yet because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this week and might have forgotten how to trust and open, your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised. We welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens in this space is powerful and life-giving. Together we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. On behalf of the members of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and to those of you who are still like visitors. If you have not already done so, please fill out a digital visitor card by visiting auuf.org/visitor so that we may welcome you. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer at minister@auuf.org with any questions or concerns you may have. Let us move into this service willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms.
Our opening words are from Patricia Sheldon. In this hour of sacred stillness, we gather to honor the life of the people we love. In this hour of sacred stillness, we remind ourselves that the flames of life and love are never fully extinguished. In this hour of sacred stillness, we offer ourselves for sharing the weight of each other's grief. In this hour of sacred stillness, we offer the strength of our love to help others survive their pain and grief. In this hour of sacred stillness, we call forth from each of us the power we offer out of life, out of loss, out of love.
I invite you to light your chalice with us this morning with these words from Florence Capito. As we kindle this flame, the flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives on in our vision. Their courage lives on in our commitments, and their love continues to bless the world through us. As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity with those families separated at our southern border. I would like to invite you to join in our opening hymn, hymn number 96 in the gray hymnal. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. The words will be shared on screen.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. Sometimes I feel like I have no friend. A long way from home. A long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from home. A long way from home.
One of the ways that we proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing our joys, concerns, and milestones. We invite those who wish to use the Zoom chat box to type your joy, concern, or milestone during the music for meditation. If you wish for your joy or concern to be acknowledged but don't want to share it, you may also type that you have an unspoken joy or concern. The offering that we make each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. To make a donation online via PayPal, please visit auuf.org/donate. If you are writing a check, please make your check payable to AUUF with a note on the memo line about whether it is for the offering or your pledge, and mail it to P.O. Box 669, Auburn, Alabama 36830. The offering will now be gratefully received.
When the night is dark and dreary, and the road has left me weary, and there's no one I can tell my troubles to.
I'll try to find the place deep down inside where faith and hope and love abide, and I can find a way to make it through. Oh, sing my sorrow away. Oh, sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. And fill me up again while I sing, sing, sing my sorrow away.
And my heart has lost its singing, when I'm torn apart and longing to be home.
I'll listen for the voice inside of me that sings of joy and harmony, and find again music in my soul. Oh, sing my sorrow away. Oh, sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. And fill me up again while I sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. And when the music fills my soul, and I am feeling strong,
Although again both joy and pain are part of the self-same song.
oh, sing my sorrow away. Oh, sing, sing my sorrow away. And fill me up again while I sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. Oh, sing my sorrow away. Oh, sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. And fill me up again while I sing, sing, sing my sorrow away. My sorrow away. My sorrow away.
Hey everyone. Today in the service, Reverend Chris is going to be talking about remembering our ancestors. Ancestors are the folks that came before us. So I'd like to spend a little bit of our time today thinking about some of the folks that came before us. Many of us, when we think about our ancestors, think about where we came from. Our parents, our grandparents' parents, and so on. Knowing where you come from is important. Once you know where you began, you can better figure out where you might want to go. This picture is pretty. I think I'll leave it up here for a while. One interesting thing that you might not know about me is that I was adopted. This means that my mom didn't think she'd be able to provide a good life for me, so she decided it would be best to help me find another family that could make sure that I was well taken care of. So I was raised by a family that did take very good care of me. But I knew from a young age that the folks that raised me weren't my ancestors. And because of that, I never really thought about much about where I came from. Then a surprising thing happened. Once I became a Unitarian Universalist, after a while I began to learn about the very interesting people that could be found within the history of this faith tradition that I had joined. I could actually trace the origins of many of the thoughts that Unitarian Universalists hold today as sacred. And through that process, I was actually able to place myself in the arc of the story of history. This was a neat and unexpected benefit I discovered once I became a Unitarian Universalist and began to learn more about my UU ancestors that cut the path that I am now able to walk on. There are many, many interesting ancestors that you can learn about in our faith tradition. A couple of my favorites are William Ellery Channing, Walt Whitman, and James Luther Adams. I often read the words that they wrote, and I can actually see the sources of many of the thoughts that I hold today in their stories. One thing about our history, though, is that there are many ancestors in our faith tradition that have been lost because folks that look like me, older white men with skin that looks like mine, for a long time were the only folks that actually decided what words were captured in books and passed down for future generations to read. As a UU minister today, one of my jobs is to try to make sure that more people's stories are remembered. This way, when future generations look back at us to learn where their beliefs came from, they will realize that everyone can have beautiful, useful, meaningful thoughts that are worth passing down. So for today's story, I wanted to share with you a bit about one of our UU ancestors that you may not have heard much about. So I want to make sure that you know her story. The person I have selected is named Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. She lived from 1825 to 1911, which is kind of a long time ago, but not really. Frances Ellen was an abolitionist, that is someone who fought against slavery, a suffragist, that is someone who fought for women's right to vote. She was a poet, a teacher, a public speaker, and a writer. Now, she wasn't born a Unitarian, but she became one later in life, which is similar to many folks in our tradition today. Frances Harper was actually one of the first African-American women to have her writings published in the United States. I think that's pretty cool. She was born a free Black woman in Maryland, which was actually a state that still allowed slavery at that time in history. By 1851, she was actually helping folks escape from slavery as part of the Underground Railroad. If you hear about the Underground Railroad in school, now you'll know that there were UUs helping out as part of that effort. And as a UU yourself, you'll be able to remember that this is one of the better aspects of our heritage. One of the reasons history remembers Frances Ellen is that she was a writer. She wrote many books and poems that describe the lives of those that had been born into slavery. Her writings dealt with many issues that we are still fighting for today: equal access to education for all, and the importance of individuals taking responsibility for the things that are still not fair in our society. One very powerful piece that she wrote began, "We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity." When I read that one, I was immediately reminded of the seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism, the idea that we should always remember and have respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. I'll leave you today with an excerpt of the poem Frances Ellen wrote. When I read this, it reminded me of a poem I wrote a few years back. Reading Frances Ellen's poem, written 100 years before I was born, really helped to remind me of the fact that we are all connected to our ancestors through time and space. This is a bit of a longer poem titled A Grain of Sand. Do you see this grain of sand lying loosely in my hand? Do you know, to me, it brought just a simple, loving thought? When one gazes night by night on the glorious stars of light, how little seems to span, measured round the life of man. That poem reminded me that we are all connected. It also reminded me that life goes by very quickly. Make sure you pay attention. You don't want to miss a moment of this miracle. I hope you enjoyed learning about Francis Harper as much as I did. I wonder who else we might learn about. Come back next time and we'll find out together. See you again soon.
The following is a reading written by Kathleen McTeague. They are still with us. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us and with them choose the deeper path of living.
Over the years, I've sporadically researched my genealogy. I think I was spurred by a desire to know who I am and where I came from. I think one of the problems of Western culture is that it doesn't always emphasize our roots, where we came from. Unlike other cultures that see filial piety or ancestor worship as ingrained in the very fabric of their culture because of a desire to know that they belong. So in many ways, I feel disconnected from any of my family beyond my grandparents' generation. Neither side of my family frequently talked about those who came before them, so other than a few stories here and there, I hadn't heard a lot about my family's past in this country, much less where we came from before we colonized America. Now, over the years, I've been successful at tracing at least one branch of my family tree from each of my grandparents to their native lands. And I have found people with stories. The Norman nobleman who fought alongside William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Or an upstart Welsh noble with dreams of becoming an English governor following the 30 Years' War. A young ethnic German farmer with dreams of coming to America that seemingly fell apart at the seams. A young Slovakian woman who made her way to Chicago as a hired maid and met a man who would both love her and break her heart. I've struggled because the people in my family tree weren't perfect. There were slaveholders and conquerors, soldiers and countrymen, the rich and the poor. It's a difficult legacy for me to wrap my head around because had it not been for these very imperfect people, I would not be alive today, and my own ability to leave a legacy would be erased. It has led to me considering how I make sense of this mixed lineage of my ancestors. How do I come to understand the life they have given me, despite the imperfections they had? For many years, I struggled with Confucianism as a philosophy and a religion for this reason. Of the three major Chinese religions, the teachings of Confucius challenged me the most because they seemingly asked that I forget about the defects of those who have come before me and instead pay them unthinking allegiance simply because I share genes and DNA with them. It seemed irrational, especially as an abuse survivor. How do I pay homage to people whose actions have hurt the world, whose legacy is so mixed, who have caused so much pain in their times? What has helped me understand that this filial piety in a much more healthy and holistic view is the Chinese concept of shu, or reciprocity. See, under Confucianism, people do have an obligation to uphold those who came before them. But it's not an unthinking worship, but a carefully considered understanding of the other person's strengths and weaknesses. Under shu, not only is the child obligated to respect their parents, but the parents must be the kind of people worthy of such piety. Wei Ming Tu, a professor at Peking University and one of the world's most preeminent Confucian scholars, says the view that a son needs to obey his abusive father is distorted. Even as a parent disciplines their child, it is the younger's job to help the parent become a better parent. If a parent is mistreating their child, the younger reflects that to them and helps them to see that their actions are not worthy of piety, that they are out of touch with the concept of shu. Ideally, the parent repents of the way they have treated their offspring and does their best to reconcile with the child they have hurt, to be worthy of their child's affection. So I'm learning to look at those who came before me not as perfect exemplars of how I should live my life, but as very imperfect people who lived life how they thought they should and often fell short of being the loving, compassionate people. After all, no matter how much I may wish it, nothing will change the fact that each one of them led directly to my parents and is therefore responsible for my existence today. Had things gone even slightly different in the world, there may be no Reverend Chris, which would have caused some complication in the search last year. By some miracle or coincidence, I stand before you a product of thousands of years of evolution leading to the present. Granted, some of my ancestors are much more problematic than others, but what each of them reminds me of, even the ones I knew personally and in some cases hurt me, is that the results of our actions ripple across generations in a temporal wave that cannot be stopped. This is a wave that connects us all in an inexorable lineage of interconnectedness across time and space, providing evidence for the truth of our seventh principle and affirming that all things in the universe depend on one another. If the actions of my ancestors affect me today in ways both big and small, it is also a reminder that my actions today will affect generations to come, for good or for bad. I can't tell you how to come to terms with your own family lineage, but what I can say is the reminder that Confucian reciprocity gives us, that we must be at least as good, if not better, ancestors than those who came before us. Filial piety is not an excuse to ignore the past or the present, but a reminder that we can learn from those who were imperfect, both in the ways of virtue and in how to be a better ancestor to those who will come after. It is a constant song which calls us to dance through life, not complacently, but with the purpose of leaving the world better than how we found it. In the words of psychologist Philip Carr Gong, the songs of our ancestors are also the songs of our children. The music we choose for today will impact the music of the future in ways immeasurable. Our duty in this life is to learn the melodies and do the dance the best we can, hoping to create a legacy that is worthy of our children's piety and love. I hope that in ways big and small, I am contributing to a better future for those who will take up the mantle of my work after I'm gone. It's one reason I feel so passionate about justice work, about dialogue, about reconciliation. I can't choose the legacy my ancestors have left for me, but I can learn from it, hoping to find ways to live joyously and compassionately in a world that so often does not value people who dare to step outside the system and seek to build a new world full of folks who need to hear the message that our songs are not finished playing yet, that new verses are always being written, and we are part of the composition. I cannot control how those who come after me will judge me. There will probably be ways that I fall short too, and I hope those who come after me will forgive me my ignorance when that time comes. However, I also want to leave a legacy of a person willing to work to build a more just, sustainable, and loving world. And if I didn't quite live up to those ideals, hopefully they'll learn from my mistakes. As we remember our ancestors today, may we also remember that we are creating a legacy that will long outlive us. And may that spur us to be vigilant to the threads of our actions. May it be so. Today is our annual Day of Remembrance service. And as we remember the loved ones we have lost this past year, let us also remember those in our fellowship who have gone before us. May their sacrifices to build this congregation inspire us to live up to their memories, and may their spirits always inhabit our service, wherever it may go.
We first honor the founders of our fellowship, without whose vision for a liberal spiritual community in the Auburn-Opelika area, we would not be here today. Jerry Roden, Harry J. Amling, Charles Gearing, George Guerin, Emmett Reeder, Spencer G. Douglas, Norman A. Britton, Vida Greenleaf, Roger Kelly, Charles H. Bonney, Bob Howes, Emmy K. Ferruta, Mary Guerin, Walter H. Greenleaf, Marjorie Kelly.
We also honor those ministers who have served our congregation in the past and recognize their legacy as continuing with us today. Reverend Bob Hill, Extension Minister from 1982 to 1983. Reverend Arthur E. Art Curtis, Extension Minister, 1984 to 1987. Reverend Mary Catherine Morin, Extension Minister, 1988 to 1989. Joan Armstrong, Intern Minister, 1989. Reverend Barb Jamestone, Extension Minister, 1989 to 1993. Reverend Diana Jordan Alinde, Extension Minister, then Settled Minister, now Minister Emerita, 1993 to 2015. Reverend Pamela Gerke, Interim Minister, 2015 to 2018. And Reverend Marty Keller, Contract Minister, 2018 to 2019.
And we honor those members of our fellowship who have passed on before us, remembering that their work continues with each of us. Alice Collier, Myra Provo, Anthony Tony Crumpton, Natalie Provo, Ed Schlesinger, Helen Schlesinger, Robert Golden, Lillian White, Norman Perry,
Francis Perry, Ann Ward Huey, Robert E. Hyde, Helen Doty, Ed Clark, Alberta McMillan, Carlston Kit Holland, Tim Kramer, Kay Stevens, Jerry Roden,
Norman Britton, Jean Henderson, Michelle Smith, Carolyn Havens, Rebecca Coco Rousseau, Judy Booth, Leonard Blanton, George Guerin, Hazel Blanton, Mary Guerin,
Vida Greenleaf, Charles D. Bush, Walter Greenleaf, Ruth C. Chip Bush, May Persons, Harry White, Jesse Summers, Kenneth William Walters, Gloria Bowman, Carl Summers Jr., Cassidy Gaia Meadows,
Paul Starr, Michael Hine, Jeffrey Bastachek, Charlotte Miller.
We also honor those we lost in the last year, whose legacy have made them spiritual ancestors for this fellowship for time to come. Debbie Bettis, Lisa Harry Nathan, Nanette E. Chadwick, Ann Pearson, and Janice Ross. May all our spiritual ancestors ever be with us in spirit and memory, and may we be faithful keepers of the work they began. May we be keepers of the flame that they lit throughout the 59-year life of this fellowship. In this season of shorter days and longer nights, we remember not just those who we've loved and lost from the fellowship, but all of the people who have died. We honor our loved ones with pictures, tokens, and candles. On this day of memory and gratitude, we remember the many whose love and nurture has helped us grow into who we are today. With thanksgiving, we remember our religious ancestors whose courage, hard work, faithfulness, and sacrifice gifted us with the free faith, these sacred grounds, and this beloved community. As we mourn those who have passed from this life and into eternity, let us also praise the miracle and mystery that gave them to us in the first place. Throughout the last 2 weeks, some of you have also submitted photos and videos for a virtual remembrance altar. I will invite Daryl at this time to play a video with those remembrances. If you were not able to submit a photo or video, I'd like to invite you to type the name of the ancestor or ancestors you wish to remember today into the Zoom chat box. You may also want to share photos with the rest of the fellowship using the file share feature. For those from lands both near and far who have died after living long, fulfilling lives, and all whose lives were lost too soon. For those who died yearning to return home, and all crossing new borders in search of a new life. For those who died in captivity, whether physical, emotional, or mental, and for all who lost their lives in natural or human-made disasters. For those who died in the midst of war, violence, and fear, and all who died by their own hands. We light these candles in remembrance of all souls, in honor of everyone both known and unknown to us who have died. Let us honor them and recommit ourselves to building a better world for their children's children. May it be so. As a side note, I want to thank Daryl for helping to put together our virtual altar, and to Becky Ritzlaff from the Aesthetics Committee for putting together a beautiful altar for us. Thank you for your service to the congregation and for helping to make this day possible. I'd like to invite you to join in our closing hymn, which is hymn number 101 in the gray hymnal, Abide With Me. The lyrics will be shared on screen.
Still with me abide when
Please join me in extinguishing our chalices. You will find the words on screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join us now in our sung benediction.
Go forth into the world in peace, in peace. Be of good courage, hold fast that which is good. Go forth into the world in peace, in peace. Love all people rejoicing in the power of the Spirit. Go in peace.
Our benediction is from Barbara J. Pescan. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their visions, we too dream. Let us go remember to live our lives with gratitude, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.